What a nightmare. A 5MEO AMT trip report by Lost in Time. Posted to earwood.org November 28th, 2006. Throughout my life, I have had the opportunity to try many different psychoactive substances, ranging from LSD to speed to salvia, and none of them have completely destroyed my ability to put together cognitive thought and function as badly as an unmeasured dose of 5MEO AMT did one night in mid-December 2005. I had trifled with the brown substance before, as I had managed to acquire some for myself, and for my previous experience I measured out 4 milligrams and took only this dose. I experienced a mild discomfort that was expected from previous flirts with substances, and experienced mild geometric hallucination effects that lasted 3 to 4 hours. Come down was not insightful. I was a little disappointed, and reconsidered the low dosage. I made a mistake feeling this way about it. The next and last time I tried 5MEO AMT, instead of measuring a dose, I licked my finger and put it in the brown powder, then ingesting the substance at about 9 o'clock at night. It was about an hour later when I felt a very strong boost in energy and was very interested in where the trip would lead. Brightness of light and colour begins to get exaggerated, and I could almost describe it as saturated, and I still think that I'm going to feel good. One of the neighbours stops by with a very small amount of marijuana and becomes interested in what kind of substance I have obviously taken. After some sort of discussion about it while watching TV, my neighbour has a fingertip worth of 5MEO AMT in his mouth. After a small toke that relieved some nausea I was feeling, I became aware that this substance was very powerful, but I still did not see the danger that lied ahead. And my neighbour managed to convince me that we should do another dose. So, we both eat another fingertip covered in 5MEO AMT. The incredible feeling of increased energy is beginning to become more of a deep change in the ability to think properly. I also had a strange feeling of discomfort in my skin. Hallucinations are geometric, but the dominant overcoming effect is the increased brightness of light and saturation of colour, and a slight illusion of the walls in the room shifting. No pretty rainbow edges like the 2C family. My neighbour begins to act strangely, and then leaves. I attempt to relax and enjoy myself, but I am becoming more and more aware that the substance is not only having a psychoactive effect on me, but is affecting my cognitive ability. And I started finding myself in a horrible dream world, where it takes minutes to remember even who I am and what is going on. I had begun to vomit. The mild visuals that I experienced earlier had become more intense than anything I have ever been through in my entire life. I was laying on the bathroom floor, watching the marble pattern linoleum make the most horrible, warped images I have ever seen in my life. The visuals were overwhelming. I smoked salvia once in a bong, and this is the only state I can compare it to. But I could not stop what was happening to me. Time was dissolving along with my world, and mere moments were turning into an eternity of agony. Through demented and laboured thought processes, I could tell that I was in a lot of trouble, and also remember noticing that my breathing was laboured. I tried to lay in bed and wait for an end to the madness, but the effects seemed to gain intensity. An hour or two feels like an eternity of senile, demented thought. Everything that has importance to me in my life was dissolved right in front of me. I do not care about anything. I saw terrible moments of traumatic events in my life happen right in front of me. I miss my family, and feel a terrible sense of guilt as they become the only thing my mind can find importance in. I become gravely aware of how frail reality and the human psyche is, and though I cannot remember much of the dementia I suffered through, I remember believing I was suffering symptoms of brain death, and thinking I knew what death might feel like. I felt I was not hallucinating. I felt like I was dying. I would suffer uncontrolled writhing in bed, and would occasionally wake up and see a strobe light effect in the room for a few moments. I was suffering sound hallucinations, and I felt itchy all over. I woke up about 11 in the morning, and I still felt a lot of the same effects from the night before. And I wonder if I will ever be the same person again. I still am not interested in many of the things my life involved. I stay awake for about 2 hours, try to eat something, and I notice my tongue cannot taste properly where I had the 5-MeO AMT on it. Everything tastes like a 9-volt battery, without the shock. I decide to go back to sleep, and I wake up the next day feeling more confident that I'll be able to get myself together again. A time goes by where I still cannot find the happiness in a lot of things, and question whether I'm even the same person I was before this happened. My neighbour relapsed on crack cocaine after taking the 5-MeO AMT, and has told me that when on the 5-MeO AMT, his vision was in black and white, and that colour would fade in and out for a while. I do not remember this effect, except maybe the white strobe light symptom when I would wake up. I think I may have ingested more than my neighbour did. Now, I generally feel like I have completely recovered from what happened to my spirit during this experience, and I would not wish what happened to me on anyone else. I sympathise deeply for the reported deaths on this substance. It is disturbing for me to think about. Very scary. A 5-MeO AMT trip report by Landell, posted to earwood.org February 28th, 2006. A friend of mine, M, told me he had acquired about 500 milligrams of 5-MeO AMT. After studying it extensively, I and 2 of my friends, H and G, decided to give it a go. M had tried it twice, once ingested and once snorted. He claimed that nobody who snorted it experienced the initial nausea that ingesting produced, and that the come-up was about 5 minutes as opposed to 2 hours. Since we didn't want to be tripping too late into the next day, and because M claimed that the nausea was the bad part of the experience, we decided to snort the chemical at around 8 p.m. Almost instantly, things seemed different. It felt like there was a pressure inside of my head, almost like a head cold, but not as uncomfortable. By 5 minutes, the speedy effects of the drugs were causing me and the others to jitter our hands in order to release what felt like this excessive energy. This was sort of like ecstasy, but there was nothing rhythmic about our movements, and they were done less for pleasure and more as an annoying necessity. As the visuals began to come in, G and H started to experience bad nausea. I was able to enjoy the visuals for a while, but eventually diarrhea kicked in instead of nausea. All 3 of us had difficulty finding a comfortable temperature. I couldn't tell whether I was too hot or too cold, and H felt he was so uncomfortably warm that he gradually stripped down to just his boxers. These negative effects, as well as the need to jitter, subsided after about an hour. I relaxed by laying in a dark room on my couch, watching the ceiling morph and crawl and the horizontal blinds shake silently, yet violently. This was the best part of my night as far as how I experienced the drug. I tripped with eyes opened or closed, and often felt I was part of the patterns I was seeing. After an hour and 10 minutes, G was past the nausea and joined me in taking in the experience. However, H never made it past the nausea, and slowly began to lose grip with reality. Over the next few hours, H's condition worsened. He was immobile and clearly having a terrible, terrible time. We managed to move him into the back bedroom, where it was dark and quiet, but no change in his environment helped him. H asked me to call his girlfriend over, stating that he might feel better with her there. It was probably about 11:30 p.m. when she arrived with a few concerned friends. But unfortunately, this was when the nightmare reached its peak. Busy taking care of H, I was no longer able to enjoy the visuals and had even managed to snap out of them to the point that they weren't there anymore, so that my mind could be clearer and more able to deal with the situation. H felt absolutely terrible and began to report problems breathing, although besides sporadic panicked gasps, he was breathing normally. Before I knew it, my friend C, who had arrived with H's girlfriend, told me that G was driving home because he could no longer deal with the situation. Why would he do that? I asked myself. But thank God, G later called me to tell him he was home safe. H's condition though? Well, he continued to degrade. He said that something was wrong. That something was wrong with the way he was reacting to the drug. I tried to calm him, but he was in a panicked state for over 3 hours, during which we moved him back into the living room on the couch. At one point, he was slipping in and out of consciousness and still taking panicked gasps of air. C, who had some medical knowledge under his belt, continually monitored H's condition. By 3 a.m, H was conscious and breathing normally, but dead to the world. He simply looked around with a blank face and sleepy eyes. Though he was still not himself and not having fun, we felt that the worst had subsided and began to have normal conversation, or as normal as it could have been throughout that night. Every now and then, H would speak only to tell us, "Stop, stop," or "That's terrible. That's terrible," in reference to what we had been talking about. Eventually, we decided to try to go to sleep. H and his girlfriend shared one bed, C slept in our extra bed, and I in my own bed, all in the same room. Nobody fell asleep until C and H's girl drifted off around about 4:45 a.m. Before that, we all had very pleasant but sometimes odd conversations, and even H was feeling a little better but still uncomfortable from the visuals. My visuals had completely faded, and the only remaining effects were the ones that kept H and I from sleep. However, this actually was the best part of the night, and much of the conversation revolved around how we all loved each other. When C and H's girlfriend conked out, H and I spent until 8 a.m. watching each hour pass very slowly and having conversations sporadically, broken by periods of silence. H was finally able to enjoy the visuals, and I helped him by waving my arm as a silhouette in front of a window. H was simply amazed, and we were both glad that he managed to finally enjoy it. I eventually fell asleep and didn't wake up until around 7 p.m. H had taken a 4-hour nap after he said the visuals persisted until 3 p.m, totaling the time of his experience to be 19 hours of a mixture of hell and bliss. We all agreed never ever to try 5-MeO AMT again. That night, H and I both decided to stop using ecstasy altogether. Because despite that we had managed to moderate our usage, we were tired of seeing some of our friends fall into heavy, mental addiction, popping multiple pills between rest periods of less than a week. We had seen people completely changed, brains and once colourful personalities fried into simple machines of survival. On top of this, we also decided to stay sober for the coming weekend. No drinking, no smoking, just sobriety and a time to reflect. Personally, I don't recommend 5-MeO AMT to anyone. Even were it not for H's moments on the brink, the initial effects it has on the digestive system were not worth the trip, especially for H and G's nausea. The duration is also a little unwieldy. H might not ever trip again after all this. I'm thinking, from now on, I'll just limit my trips to the more well-known psychedelics, and I, and the other two who join the experience, urge others to do the same. I regret it every day of my life. A 5-MeO AMT and Cannabis Trip Report by Satsuki Kamari, posted to earwood.org August 20th, 2009. Okay, well, where do I even start? Saturn V is what it was called by the people I knew. It's like acid, is what my friend was informed. I was excited because acid was very rare from where I was from. Me and my best friend both bought 5 milligrams each and a quarter a pot. We took our dose a little after midnight, and then smoked a bowl, getting ready for what we had no idea was actually in store for us. We both knew that acid was intense, but we both had done our research and was prepared for the worst, or so we thought. About an hour later, we'd both ran to the bathroom to vomit. Our stomachs were a mess, but besides that, all we had felt was just a cloudy high. We both vomited one at a time. When I did, as soon as I lifted my head, everything was different. The walls in the bathroom were not only moving, they were alive. My body had never felt so fake, and my life had never felt so fragile. We both gathered back in my bedroom where we didn't talk much. Our plans of watching trippy movies and listening to bands like Pink Floyd seemed very immature at this point. What have we done? What the fuck have we done? We both asked each other. The two of us smoked a bowl, hoping for it to mellow us out. The pot had almost no effect at all, whereas earlier on it was very potent. And this, well, this is where it all goes down. My friend took off his shirt and was beginning to freak out. Meanwhile, I was in amazement while looking at my blinds because they were moving or breathing like the gills of a fish. I tried to find music to calm us because silence was just pure hell. I had a good library to choose from as well. I went from the Beatles to Air, but everything seemed to be freaking us out even more. We finally stopped on Fish. For some reason, it was just right. After spending a couple hours and realising it wasn't going anywhere, we decided to go outside, and I will admit that the sun was just coming up, and we had a pond in the front yard which, in this experience, was looking outstandingly beautiful. The grass was very neon, and the trees and leaves were alive. I would stare at a leaf and watch it suck inward back to a seed, then slowly come back out to a leaf. My friend looked like a plastic doll. We felt like we were coming down a little bit, so we decided to go to the nearest park. He drove, as I never felt so weird being in a car. Earwood note: driving while intoxicated, tripping, or extremely sleep deprived is dangerous and irresponsible because it endangers other people. Do not do it. So we go to a park, walked a trail to a hidden area by a stream. We sat there for at least 5 hours smoking bowls after bowls of pot. The drug was still very much in effect and enhanced terribly by the lack of sleep. Soon after, we had both took our own ways and finally slept that night. Sadly, I must say that even after such a terrible experience, I took it 2 other times, and also recommended it to some of my friends that still to this day will never trip on anything ever again. One of my friends even snorted it up his nose, and later on, during his trip, pulled something that he described as a piece of pink lettuce out of his nose, alongside outstanding headaches for years and years to come. My final words for this Saturn V is shit. Do not ever do this stuff, ever. This is a research chemical, and do not be a test rat. All of the friends that did this, including myself, have never been the same since. Some have had serious mental issues. Myself, I still seem to have these minor visualizations when I look at my carpet or at the walls. Sometimes I look at the carpet and it seems to look like it's moving. And this is years after doing this drug. I don't care what someone says to you. This is your life and your only body. Don't fuck your brain up with this stuff because it will. I consider it highly dangerous and not recommended for first-time trippers. If you love tripping so bad, then just stick to mushrooms. I know, I will admit, I am in no place to be an anti-drug person, and still love pot and etc. But I would in a heartbeat do anything possible to help keep this stuff off the streets. Kids don't need to have this. And just think, oh, I'm just a kid, I'm experimenting. Even an adult would almost want to off themselves on this stuff. Do not take it. 5-methoxy-A-methyltryptamine, also known as 5-MeO-AMT, AO-dimethylserotonin, AODMS, and alpha-O, and according to this other guy in the trip report, Saturn V, is a synthetic psychedelic substance of the tryptamine's chemical class that produces potent, long-lived, psychedelic, entactogenic, and stimulant effects when administered. This is coming from Psychonaut Wiki, as per usual. So, what is this? Well, it's a disturbing little cousin, a derivative of AMT, a substance we've covered before, and an analogue of 5-MeO-DMT, a substance we've covered many, many times. According to Wikipedia, this substance is said to be the most potent psychedelic of the simple, and bear with me because this is so hard to pronounce, indolylcylamines, or indolylcylamines. But what does that actually mean? Well, they're a class of compounds similar to the tryptamines, DMT, psilocin, psilocybin, 5-MeO-DMT, bufotenin, and according to Wikipedia, this is the most potent of the bunch. Very potent at low dosages. A lot of the worst experiences you hear about on Earwid are overdoses, but even then it must be said that this substance, like many 5-MeO analogues or derivatives, can have some seriously adverse effects on your body. Genuinely destructive. I've said many times before that we often forget how physically taxing psychedelics actually are on the brain and your body. If you're taking a psychedelic and your body, you're getting like a bad body load to the point where you feel like you've been poisoned, I would go out on a whim and say that it's damaging your body. The fact that there's so much nausea, diarrhea, and a fluctuation in temperature says to me that this psychedelic is probably gonna be having a much more taxing effect on the body than, say, its other cousins in the particular tryptamine family it's from. I'm not going to try and pronounce the specific one again. Going back to Wikipedia, 5-MeO AMT has supposedly been sold as 4mg tablets by the street name Alpha O and taken as a recreational drug. Since the DEA arrests of the makers of a huge percentage of the United States LSD in 2000, 5-MeO AMT may have occasionally been sold under the guise of LSD in liquid, sugar cube or blotter form, though this may be due to DEA reports of finding it on sugar cubes and blotters like LSD. This is another great example of the fact that if you don't have a test kit and you're buying stuff off the streets, no matter how much you trust your dealer, it can be so easy to buy a tab and it be 25i or something like this, 5-MeO AMT, and you get, well, the duration of this drug is up to 18 hours. 18 hours of, like, literal agony if you overdose on it. And it can be easily overdosed because the dose taken orally is usually 2 to 4 milligrams. Say the person dosing the tab, the sugar cube, the blotter, whatever, blotter, tab, same thing, they could seriously overdose it, and they could just, it can get on the street, and your dealer, who you've trusted your whole life, your whole substance using career, he's not going to be able to know, because unless he has a test kit, and he isn't very thorough with his like sources that he's getting it from, this can easily happen to anybody. Obviously, if you're from the United States, be very cautious about this. In the United Kingdom, I've very much noticed, and this is this is a relative affair. Whereabouts where I'm from in the United Kingdom, the street dealers very much seem to, whilst don't sometimes sell dodgy stuff, you don't hear of anything like this happening. Like, oh, there was a death from 5-MeO AMT overdose, or there was fentanyl in the ketamine. Although it must be said that actually in the northwest of England, there's been heroin found in ketamine on the street, so that is also something to take into account. It must be said, test kits are absolutely essential if you want to be experimenting with substances. I mean, of course, like many of the reporters in these reports said, just don't bother taking 5-MeO AMT, even if it's just out of curiosity. A lot of them seem to just take it because they didn't have any other option and they were just desperate to trip. How many times have we covered stories like these on the channel, and people just are desperate to get LSD, and they'll go through any source. They'll go for some random guy that one of their mates knows, and he's like, oh yeah, this guy sells blotters, and they don't have any research or knowledge about this stuff, so they go and take that blotter. It's 5-MeO AMT, it's a toxic amount, and they die. According to Wikipedia, Gloria Discerni, 18, rest in peace, died after overdosing on a drug initially believed to be LSD. Authorities learned months later that the drug wasn't LSD, but a designer drug identified as 5-MeO AMT. Let's say, for example, there's a veteran psychonaut, and he loses a few of his plugs that he trusted, or he got it through other safer means that we won't talk about. He's got like this new plug, and the guy just tells him like, yeah, man, I got a fucking like the most powerful LSD you've ever had in your life. It'll shift you into maximum overdrive. And then it's just 5-MeO AMT. And then this guy picks it up like, yeah, whatever, I'll fucking take a few hits of this because I've done a few hits of LSD and I'm fancying to up my dosage range. And if he says it's LSD, then I'm gonna do it. And then he ends up taking 5-MeO AMT, assuming it's LSD, and overdoses on it, goes to hospital, and might actually give himself brain damage or permanent HPPD, which it appears in a few of these trip reports. Some of the users actually had permanent HPPD, some of them seem to have like actual literal like brain damage. And not only that, it scared them off tripping for life. So something like tripping using psychedelics wisely, consciously, responsibly, you can use them for personal development, exploring consciousness, combining it with your spiritual practices. These things, psychedelics, and certain other things like dissociatives, if used wisely, they can be used to heighten your consciousness and expand your awareness. As I've said so many times, it's just becoming a broken record. They can be used for good, whatever good is. It can be used for your own personal benefit and a collective benefit within the world. But is there a collective benefit for 5-MeO AMT ending up on the streets as LSD? No. And then this is obviously a consequence of the war on drugs. Is that so LSD gets made illegal, then they just do another research chemical that's you can put on a blotter, and then that ends up killing loads of people. So clearly the war on drugs doesn't work, but I'm not the first to say that, and I'm not going to be the last. We all know that anyway. So yeah, maybe talk about that more in the future, because I know there's a big thing going on in the UK at the minute where the Green Party leader, Zach Polansky, he has a drug policy that's similar to the Portugal, like blanket decriminalization, regulation of like Class A substances in a nuanced fashion, and it's being taken out of context. And this is my Keir Starmer impression. The return of the sausages. Zach Polansky is wanting to sell my son heroin, and I think it's absolutely disgusting that he has this idea. And all of the reels that you see are just taken out of context, where he's like, yeah, I just, like Zach Polansky's saying, like, not saying I'm a Green Party voter, like, or getting political or anything. I'm just saying this is what's just going on, like, in the news. I just thought it was interesting, because obviously my channel's about substances, so this piqued my interest when he said this. And I noticed that all the reels that I saw on social media were taking out of context like a little fraction of the actual interview, and then he went on like some comedy panel show and described the actual nuanced tactic that his government would employ to make drug use safe and just sort of eliminate the drug problem, or do their best to do so. And I mean, fucking anything's better than whatever we've got going on in the UK right now. So when you actually listen to the full thing and not the fucking short reel that's giving you the most doctored element of what this guy was saying in a wider sense, essentially, really, fake news. They're painting out Polanski to be a drug lover. And I'm not even trying to get political here, but I would like to talk in the future about where do we go with like drug policies, especially in regards to the UK, which obviously I know the most about, being a UK citizen. But I also don't want to get too political on the channel, because we all know how that ends up going down. But in the context of drugs and the future of psychedelics, especially in terms of therapy, I think it's very much worth talking about. So that was a little rather tangential. To tie it back into 5-MeO AMT, this must be said, and I've said it many times, in regards to substances that, for the most part, mess you up. We have to be very, very honest with ourselves that sometimes people take these substances and have these, as Irwin would categorise them, as glowing and or mystical experiences that have some profound effect upon their life and their consciousness. But because in a general sense, substances like 5-MeO AMT or 5-MeO DPT, which I hear is quite taxing on the body as well, or Datura, or whatever, man. Yes, there are always going to be outliers that have some super life-changing spiritual experience. It awakens them to love and the beauty of reality and God and all the other spiritual stuff that I like to go on about. But this shouldn't be an excuse to actually use the substance, but these things do happen. These things are going to happen. People will take it because some people just can't have their curiosity diminish. Some people are just going to be like, well, my mission in life is to take all the substances, and whether that is a good thing for them or a bad thing for them, well, that's on them, isn't it? But for me, as someone with a bit of an influence, what am I going to say? I'm going to reduce it down, generalize it, and say, well, let's just look at, like many of the trip reporters said at the end, let's just look at the psychedelics that are proven to be the most effective for getting the best benefits out of psychedelics. Like taking wise doses of LSD in terms of your body weight. Really, on a level, you've just got to be majorly responsible. That's really just the fucking kettle of fish, innit, mate? Be responsible when using psychedelics. Even the ones that have been proven, like psilocybin and LSD and DMT and 5-MeO-DMT, to be extremely positive in certain environments and contexts and at dosage ranges that are controlled and etc. And like, we all know that these substances can be ridiculously positive. Just don't mess about with them, and just be very cautious as a psychonaut. Don't get too cocky, because sometimes you'll be like, right, well, and I actually do think that it's healthy in a sense to explore many different psychedelic substances and mind-altering substances that are proven to be safe, and you are dosing them at a safe range. Someone who isn't me would encourage you to explore a range of substances for personal development and spirituality and all of the good shit that we go on about through Vivec and anyone who's a psychonaut knows about. But also be aware that there can be a cockiness, there can be an ego that forms in the back of your mind. You can think you're this psychonaut veteran.
I think this guy's lost his mind. He's mixing Salvadoran A with 5-MeO AMT, and he's sprinkling Datura seeds on top of it. I think it's time we get out of here.
Well, there's people like that, aren't there? Someone asked me the other day, like, oh, what do you think about combining psychedelics? Because obviously I cover a lot of like substance combinations, and I don't actually encourage them. I just find it really, really interesting, because at the end of the day, people are going to do it, and they have done it. But personally, would I encourage you to combine psychedelics? I don't think so, because I think it amplifies the risk. And not only does it amplify the risks of both chemicals, it also amplifies the risks of the variables that psychedelics have on different people's genetics. Oh yeah, someone might combine, do a nexus flip or a candy flip, and it goes really well for about 10 people, well 9 people, and then the 10th person to candy flip, they die. Or they have a nexus flip and they have PTSD, permanent HPPD, and it just doesn't work for them. Whereas if the 10th person in this context just took LSD or 2CB by itself, and he would have had a great trip, worked through some trauma, did some shadow work, had some spiritual awakening experiences, changed his life for the better, and having a domino effect on other people. Because when you start working on yourself and on your inner bullshit, working through your shadow and becoming a better person, quote unquote, whatever that means, I would say just a more wise and conscious person, a healthier person of mind, spirit and body. This has a domino effect on your friends and your family and your loved ones, and this is really how we heal the world, if that's possible. And maybe it is, maybe it's not, but either way, we've got to keep trying. And I hope you enjoyed finding out about this rather obscure and interesting substance and my usual tangential ramblings in the commentary sections. So if you have made it to this part of the video, I will say the most generic YouTube spiel you can ever imagine. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe for more. But funnily enough, it must be said, if you manage to make it to almost 39 minutes into the video, you definitely are subscribed, and you definitely are liking, and you definitely are commenting, and maybe even hit that bell notification. So anything helps. Use that hype system as well. The hype system on your phone, you can hype up videos now. Helps me in the algorithm. I'm not one to even talk about any of this stuff, and I don't really care in a sense. I definitely care because I'd love to get Vivec bigger. I'd love to inspire more people, and for me as myself, just as a creator, to get bigger and to evolve my content. And it does actually help. So if you can do that, that's awesome. Share it with your friends, share it online in other spaces. Thank you so much. Love you all. Peace and love and all that jazz. Hope you had a good weekend, and we'll be back with more weird stuff that we know and love very, very soon. Anyway, peace out, and I'll see you on the other side.